Hello and welcome back. This is part 3. We are still talking about Flutter UI fundamentals. In this video, we are going to focus more on the UI or the user interface in Flutter. We are going to discuss different user interfaces or UI components. We are going to use Visual Studio Code and write code together, so it will be an interesting one. So let's get started. First thing, we need to open the counter app project. Like along the previous videos, we explained how to install Flutter and how to create a new project. In case you don't have the Flutter framework, just go and install the Flutter SDK. I recommend you to watch the first video. In case you have the Flutter SDK in place, so you need to create a new project. This is how to do it. Maybe you just open the CMD or the terminal. Yeah, just open the terminal and go to the directory that you prefer. I recommend you guys to stay away from like sensitive directories because Flutter takes a lot of space. So if you are on Windows, stay away from C. If you are on Mac, make sure that you go to the directory that you own or you control, and then type the command flutter create and the name of the project. Let's call it counter app, for example, and then click enter. So once you do that, you should end up with a project similar to this one. You already have everything in place. There should be a code because Flutter creates a new project, new default project called counter app, and this is what we are going to analyze today or try to understand together. So first of all, go to the lib folder, specifically to the main.dart, and then I want you to run this application. If you open it in Visual Studio Code, then from the terminal, just in case the terminal is not open by default, go to the terminal, new terminal, and then type flutter run D, or shortcut for device, then Chrome. We explained that command before. We are simply running Flutter, but we are targeting the web platform since it's the most simple. So we need to just explain the fundamentals of Flutter. So we don't want to go for iOS or Android or complex stuff at the beginning. So here we go. Once you write this command, you should see, let me make it to the left for you guys to see it. Okay, so you should see this application right here. That's a simple application. It's a counter. It counts how many times you press the button and increase the numbers as we go. So now we are going to write this application from scratch. We are going to understand all the code here, but for us to better understand, let's do something. Let's clear everything or delete everything in the main.dart and save the file. If you have this test folder, you are probably going to have some problems here. That's why you see it in the red color. Just delete this whole folder. We don't need it for now. And then go again to the main.dart. So now, let's try to wrap together all what we have learned so far in this course regarding Dart syntax. First of all, any Dart application must begin with an entry point. So I'm going to write the entry point. So I'm going to write void main. This is the entry point for any Dart application. And in order to make this a Flutter application, we need to call the essential function called run app. And you see, it automatically imported it from the Flutter. In case it didn't, so just type run app, and then hover on the name of the function, and you will find a yellow icon. Just click on it, and you will find something called import library Flutter material. So this is what we need. This is a method that we need to use in Flutter. It's called run app. So now, in order to run our application, then we need to pass parameters to this method, run app, because you see here this error saying one positional argument expected by run app, but 0 found, which means that you need to pass the missing arguments. So now, what's the missing argument? So if you go and see the signature of the method, you can see it just by hovering, or by right-click, go to definition. You can see here the signature of the method. It needs something called widget. Widget is the fundamental block, UI block in Flutter. Think of it as a brick where you want to build a house, and the fundamental or the building unit will be the brick. So now you need to pass widget, but how to pass it? Like if you try to do something like this, like new widget or even an instance from the widget, you will find the error because abstract classes cannot be instantiated. We discussed this in details in the previous video, part 2. We explained how abstract classes are not ready to be used, and we need another class which extends the widget either directly or indirectly to be a concrete class. So now this will repeat a lot, like this situation where you need to pass a widget and you don't know what object to pass because you cannot instantiate object. This error or this problem will repeat a lot. So if you guys like try to understand it at the very beginning, it will be very easier for you to follow up in the next steps. I'm going to repeat it more and more, and I'm going to try to explain it with different methods. It's a bit complex at the beginning, especially if you don't have a lot of information or background regarding OOP. But I promise the more you repeat it and the more you see it, the more it will be easier with you. So that's the rule. You cannot pass abstract classes. You need to pass an instance of a concrete class, and this instance could directly or indirectly extend the widget. So let's see examples. So for example, if I want to directly extend the widget, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a new class, let's say called direct implementation, direct imp. And I'm going to extend using the keyword extends. We discussed this in the previous video. If you didn't see it, I really recommend you to go and see it. And then I'm going to say widget. And then, as you know, you cannot implement or extend an abstract class without implementing all the methods in a concrete way. So you see the error is very descriptive. It's saying missing concrete implementation of widget.createElement. So if you go to the yellow icon and then create one missing override here, you will see that Visual Studio Code is auto-completing the missing override for you so that you can implement it. So this is direct implementation. Although you can pass it here like this, you can copy it and then replace the widget with it, and here we go. However, you still need to implement this. Otherwise, if you go and refresh or try to run, by the way, here you can see the word that the app is listening, and you need you need to press R to hot restart the changes. So if you just click here and press R, this should hot restart the application. So we solved the problem that we passed something to the run app method. However, our application doesn't work. As you can see here, unimplemented error. So this is one way to pass the widget, which is to create an extension for it, and this is called the direct implementation. Although widgets are considered the building blocks or the building units, the fundamental units of Flutter, however, they are very rare to be used because it requires a lot of effort. I just want you to think about a house that needs to be built from 1 million bricks. So this is a lot of work, right? So if someone said, okay, instead of building the house with 1 million brick, I'm going to do some little help here. I'm going to group together each maybe 1,000 brick and create a module. Let's say it called 1K block, for example. So now it's easier to build the house using the 1K blocks, right? It's much easier than trying to build it using the brick. Same thing applies in Flutter. Widgets are the fundamental building block. Everything is a widget, and the widget tree contains the root of a widget, and every child under it is also a widget. However, the widget class itself requires a lot of work. So that's why, luckily, there are a lot of replacements for the widget that can make our life easier. We can say that this is indirect implementation. If you remember from the last video, we mentioned two of the most important like subclasses of the widget or replacement for the widget. They are named stateless and stateful widgets. So now we can create a new class. So let's say this is example 1, but it requires a lot of effort. So let's say example 2. Example 2 will be to implement a class. Let's call it indirect implementation, which extends something that extends widget. This is called indirect implementation. And this thing that we are going to extend is what I mentioned before, which is the stateless widget. So again, the same error. If you hover, missing concrete implementation, just hover until or click until the yellow icon appears, click on it, and then click create one missing override. And then you see here we did the implementation. We can just copy this here and replace the direct implementation with it. And here we go. So although the class named indirect implementation is not a widget, however, it extends something called stateless widget, which if we go to it, right click, go to definition, it extends a widget. So this is why I called it indirect, because this is called inheritance. This can go recursively forever. You can say class A is extending class B, and then class C is extending class A, and then class D is extending class A, you know, and all of them will be like all of them grouped together under the umbrella of the root or the base class. So everything will be considered the base class. So this means that even if you created here a class, let's say class X, which extends the indirect implementation, and then you can even pass this into here because everything extends the widget at the very root or at the very first level. So just forget about that. So from now on, now we learned that that everything is a widget. However, widget is very low level, so it's less likely to be used because it requires a lot of effort. So from now on, we are going to use the alternatives of the widget. But since the alternatives themselves are not concrete, as you can see, if you go to the stateless widget and go to definition, you will find that it's abstract. So this means that you cannot pass here directly a stateless widget. Instead, you need to pass another class that inherits or extends the stateless widget. And this is exactly what we did here, right? We just created a new class and then we passed it. So now let's do some cleanup. First of all, let's clear this example regarding the widget, because we're not going to use widget directly. Now we learned that there are some better alternatives. Second, let's rename the class to something that makes more sense. This thing that's passed to the run app, like as the name of the method implies, it's run app. So maybe you call it app or my app or whatever. So let's call it my app maybe. I think there is there is a nice hack here that you can, oh no, forget about it, just rename it to app. So now we have a class called app that is extending from the stateless widget. However, if we save this file and then go here and press R again, still we have the same error. Why? Because there is a method called build that expects a widget from you, an output called widget. And now this is a default implementation. It's just throwing an error. This is why you see here an error. So we need to delete this and we need to start the implementation. So this is a simple task, right? It's very similar to the task before. So the build method, it has a return type of widget. Now, ask yourself the same question. I need to return something with the type widget. So should I just buy widget? No, because widgets are abstract and they cannot be instantiated. This is number one. Plus, number two, widgets are very low level and they are less likely to be used directly. Instead, there are much better alternatives. Like we said, stateless and stateful and so on. However, if you think about it, now, if I replace this with a stateless widget, of course, you know that you cannot pass something directly from the stateless because the class itself is abstract. So what does this mean? Do we need to create a new class and then extends the stateless widget like this and then pass it here and then go here and implement? Yeah, this should work here. But now, what about this new class? How are you going to extend it? So yeah, that's another problem. Here, we need to pass something that indirectly extends the widget class. However, it must be concrete because stateless widgets are abstract, right? We need something concrete because if we don't have anything concrete, we will go like this forever, we will just keep creating classes and then copying them and creating new classes, and this will go forever. But luckily, there are a lot of also built-in classes that support you, especially at the very beginning of the app, because we are still in the very beginning of the app, right? We need something to contain the whole application. So here comes something called material app. It's something built in and it's ready to be used, and luckily it solved the problem because it's a concrete implementation. Let's go and see the definition of this. Right click and go to definition. So first of all, it's called class material app. This means there is no abstract keyword. That's perfect. This means that this is a concrete class. This is a class that's ready to be used. And it extends something called stateful widget. Although we didn't yet use it, however, you can guess what is it, right? It's like the sister of stateless widget. It's called the stateful widget. It's just very similar to it, right? But here I need a widget. So how could this material app work if it inherits from something called stateful widget? That's simple. It inherits it indirectly. Means that if you go to the stateful widget also and go to definition, yeah, this is the answer. It extends from the widget. So that's why it works here. So this means that whenever you meet something saying widget and you need to pass a widget, luckily there are a lot of alternatives in Flutter. So this means that you can pass something that's indirectly inheriting or extending the class widget, such that we did now. We did the same thing. We passed material app, which inherits from something called stateful widget, which in turn inherits from the widget, and it works here directly. Now that's great. Okay, so everywhere in the code, you are going to face something similar to this. You are going to face properties that needs to pass as widgets, and you will have alternatives. And by the time you will memorize those alternatives, it was very important for me to show you or to explain to you at the beginning that those alternatives are just, like different options for the widget class. They are all widget, as you can see here, which is actually very powerful because when everything inherits from the same class, this makes things easier. And by the time you will memorize these names, status widget, stateful material app, and a lot of many other classes, you will memorize them and you will practice on them. So don't worry if you don't know a lot of classes at the beginning. That's totally normal. So great. So now what's next? Let's see some errors here, because you can see the problems tab in the Visual Studio Code. If you have everything set up in place and all the extensions and configurations are in place, you should see you should see the problems in the code as you go. Whenever you write something, the analysis here should start working and analyze your code and give you messages. So if you here go and then you'll find the message constructor for public widget should have a name key parameter. All right, everything you are every time you feel confused about what to do, just click on the message on the error, and then either if you hover, you could find something called quick fix. You can also see the shortcut for it here from the keyboard, or you can wait until you see this nice yellow icon and click on it, and then you will find the possible quick fixes. Usually the first option is the most suitable option to go. This is something with low level of importance. That's why you see it's a blue line, it's not a red line or an error or something major. However, it's it's a good practice to always keep your code without any problems. So here I'm just going to hit the first option, and I'm not going to talk about this for now. I'm going to talk about it in later videos because this is not specifically related to UI. So I'm just going to choose it. And then if you see there is another problem here that popped up, it's using use const with the constructor to improve blah, blah, blah. All right, I'll just go to quick fix and then choose the first option. And here you go. You see, it's magic. Now, this is another type of error, which says, okay, use const with constructor. Okay, same thing, just hover and then scroll down a bit, quick fix. All right, here we go. Now we fixed all the problems. All right, so let's save the project. And then let's go to the terminal. Make sure that you click on the terminal and click anywhere and then press R to hot reload. And the application has built again, and congratulations. We have built our first empty application. It doesn't do anything, it's just empty. However, it contains a lot of concepts or fundamentals that you definitely learn it for now. So next steps is to, start filling our app. So now, where is our main class? Our main class is the app class, which returns something called the material app. So the material app is the very first widget. Do you remember? It's still a widget, right? In the something called the widget tree. The widget tree is simply the whole application expressed in a tree, where each widget has internal or children of type widget, and each of the children also have its own children, also of type widget, and so on. That's why it's called a tree. So the very first node, it's called the root node of the tree here, is the material app. And if you go on the material app, you see, just go to the definition again. And then you see this thing here. It might be complex, but if you remember from the previous videos, we talked about something called the named arguments, or the named parameters. And we said that this works with the methods and with the constructors as well, because constructors are just methods, right? And then some of them are mandatory and some of them are optional. And in the previous video, the mandatory things started with the keyword required. Now we see a lot of things that doesn't start with the keyword required, which means that all of them are optional, which means that there are parameters and options and configurations that could be passed here to this class. However, since they are not mandatory, we didn't pass them. We didn't know about them. But usually, how I know about them is just by hovering on the material app. Hovering here is very useful because Visual Studio, guys, is full of documentation and it's full of information. So whenever you hover on something, you could see the different parameters here. By experience and by time, you will get the right knowledge and know which are the essential properties of each thing. So the material app has a lot of attributes. One of the essential attributes is called title. If you go here and type title, do you see, are you now familiar with this thing, title, column, and let's say title here? This is a parameter passed to the material app constructor. But this argument or parameter is named, not positional. So that's why it started with the name of the parameter or the argument, and then colon, and then the value. Now, after we added this parameter, like, you should guess that this should edit the title of our application. So let's see what this will do. If we just click here and click R, yeah, restart and then refresh. Yeah, probably this is something that's related more to, sorry, before judging, let's just save. Because you see this dot here means that you have unsaved changes. So you go to File Save or Control S or Command and S, whatever, and then you go repeat again and write R, and yeah, here we go. So you see the title of the tab now is called title. So this was a direct reflection for what the change that we made here. If you just add S, then save, and then here R, here we go, you see it's reflecting. Perfect. So we started not only creating our application, but also communicating with it. This is very important step because all the upcoming activities that you are going to do is very similar to what we have done so far. You see, this is very interesting because we didn't do a lot. We actually wrote like 15 lines of codes, just one method. We didn't do anything literally, but this is the basics or the fundamentals of everything that we are going to do in the future. Everything will be based on this type of communication, that you understand the type of the class that you are passing. You go on the hover to read some of the documentation. You go and discover the attributes, and then eventually you do some hot restart and see the result on the UI, and then you start, like discovering how great Flutter is. For example, in the next couple of minutes, I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm just going to, like apply things that we learned so far. And let's see with the very basics, how far can we go in a short time. So now after adding the title, I'm going to add something called home, which is very interesting because any app needs the home. So the home is basically the first page that are going to be added. And what's home? I don't know. I'm going to hover to see. And after hovering, I see it's a widget. Okay, got it. So how to pass it? Widget? No, because widgets are very low level and they are abstract. Stateless widget? Maybe, but they are also abstract. You need another class. Luckily, there is something built in that fits the exact need of a page. It's called scaffold. And don't worry, you're going to memorize this as we go. So things that fit the whole app is called material app. And for each page, things that fit the page is called scaffold. And what is a scaffold? Let's see. Go to definition and you can see. No wonder, it's just a stateful widget. It's just a name for something that we know. And inside the stateful widget, definitely you will find the widget. So here is the scaffold, and this is a constructor of the scaffold, and I don't know what are the things, so I'm going to hover, and there is something called body, and I'm just going to cheat a bit because I already know that there is something called the app bar. Yeah, here, the app bar. So in the body, I'm going to pass just something that I know also. It's called container. And you can see here is an error because there are something that's mismatching. If you don't know, you just go and then hover on the yellow icon. Oh, sorry, this time it will not work. The constructor being called is not a const constructor. Try removing const from the constructor. Sorry guys, this time it will not just work by saying quick fixes. For some reason there are no quick fixes available, but the solution is very easy. It's just saying try removing const from the constructor. This is a constructor, this is a const. I'm just going to remove it and that's it. Error was solved. So now I need to define something called app bar because it's very interesting, it's fancy, and it shows the title in the page. So I'm going to define this. And for the app bar, also, I know previously that there is something called app bar. And let's hover to see what are the interesting attributes that we can pass to the app bar. And there is something called title, which is a widget, which is very interesting because we need the title, Let's see how this will work. So I'm going to pass the title, and it's of type widget. So we need to pass a widget, but I just need to write like, this is my first app. I need to pass something basic. Luckily, there is a widget for that. It's called text, and it takes an input. If you hover on it, it takes an input string called data. So first of all, text, if you go to definition, text is just a stateless widget. You see, it's nothing fancy. And here we need a widget, so it works. But text takes an input, which is a string. But now, how to pass it? Like, why it's different from these things right here? Why it's requiring it? Because if you remember, this constructor takes data argument or parameter as named, positional argument, not named argument. That's why it's mandatory and it must become at the beginning. It cannot be reordered, and it doesn't need you to go and say data and then pass it like this. No, it doesn't work like this because this is a positional parameter. So I'm going to pass, this is my first app, and I'm going to go and put some nice format. We have a problem here. I'm going to go and quick fix it. Just hover on the nice yellow icon. Yeah, here there is a quick fix. I'm just going to click add const modifier, and here we go. Now we have the dot. This means that we have unsaved the changes. I'm going to save. I'm going to go to the terminal, press R, and you see this nice blue bar that is up here, including the text. This is my first app. You see, it's just because I wrapped up a few members together, like the scaffold and the inside it called the app bar, and put the text widget. And all of them, without exceptions, are widgets. They are just different alternatives. You could use widget, but you will have to do a lot of effort to just draw this nice blue bar containing this text. Instead, you just use something that's built in. It's called text. And if you right click, go to definition, you will find this stateless widget, which in turn extends the widget, which is our basic class. This is very nice, and actually it's very powerful that you will always find built-in components for things that you need to build. I think the remaining videos or the remaining parts will be very easy. We will be just exploring the different alternatives for widgets. Each one has its own parameters or arguments that needs to be supplied. Each one has its own attributes. But the most beautiful thing is that all of them are just widgets. All of them could fit into each other's place. This is how powerful Flutter is. So I hope you guys really interested this video and enjoyed it. I was in a bit hurry, but I really hope you guys it was useful for you. So see you soon, guys, in the next video.